Two Doors Down. It's about time.
If you're going to live, leave a legacy. Make a mark on the world that can't be erased. Maya Angelou.
We've learned that time is a bottomless source of inspiration. Rabbit holes everywhere.
That's the truth.
Legacy is one of many threads woven into the tapestry of time. We change the world, and legacy are these changes as they live and breathe beyond the lives we live. Join us for Time and Legacy. What will yours be?
Day 3. I think you're doing wonderful. I'm so excited. Chris, I have an interesting headline crime story to share with you today, and this one is about Robert Roberson. Roberson, you're right. I think that's the proper way. Robert Roberson. Robert Roberson has spent 20 years on death row for a crime that never even happened. Roberson is now 57, and he was convicted of capital murder in 2003 for reportedly shaking his 2-year-old daughter to death. Now, Roberson is...
Well, that sounds like a crime to me.
Well, that is a crime, but it didn't happen. Shaken baby syndrome, now a lot of the markers that they use to decide that a case was a shaken baby syndrome have now been found to be untrue. And those include, well, let me just read you this. The science behind shaken baby syndrome is increasingly being questioned, especially when there is no obvious physical evidence of an assault. So some of the issues with the science of shaken baby syndrome are retinal hemorrhaging. Now, retinal hemorrhaging can be a symptom of a shaken baby, but it also occurs in normal bursts and has other normal causes. I mean, you had an event where your eyes hemorrhaged, so you weren't a shaken baby. Subdural hemorrhage. Thin film subdural hemorrhage is bleeding in the membrane surrounding the brain, and it's more likely to be caused by immaturity in a baby than it is by shaking. And then encephalopathy is brain damage, disease, or malfunction. It's caused by a secondary cascade of events, including brain swelling and lack of blood and oxygen supply. And here's the biomechanics of your brain shows that shaking produces less acceleration than a short fall. So this supports that a lot of the shaken baby cases that they just assumed were shaken baby syndrome actually truly probably were falls. And Robert Roberson's 2-year-old daughter did fall out of her bed. But the things that really made the prosecutors decide that he was guilty of shaken baby syndrome was that he was different. Robert Roberson's autistic, and some of the things that he does are different from what we would do and the way we would react to something. For instance...
Oh, wait a second. What you're saying is what's different about him is the way that his normal behavior in his world is different than the average person.
Yes.
Because he's autistic.
Yes. So the reactions that he had during his daughter's injury were different than what people expect someone would act.
Which gives the common public this knee-jerk reaction to it. They don't like it that he's laughing or smiling or anything else. They don't. They want to see somebody that has a normal reaction, that they're filled with grief or something.
To react the way they think they would. So one of the things was that she fell out of bed, and he got her, and instead of just bringing her straight to the hospital, he dressed her in a nice outfit. And they thought that was just weird.
After she was dead?
No, she wasn't dead yet. She'd fallen out of bed. She died at the hospital.
He didn't react as though there was an emergency situation.
But, for him, you don't leave the house unless you're properly dressed. I mean, that's just the way it is. And then when the police came to his house to look over the crime scene and investigate, as he was showing them through the kitchen, he just stopped in the middle of the tour and fixed himself a sandwich and ate it. And they just thought, that's so bizarre. This man is not feeling sorrow or remorse like we would feel.
Yeah.
And so obviously
so what he
he's
was on,
guilty.
what he was tried for, what he was charged with was being autistic.
Yes.
I mean, that's really what it boils
Yes.
down to.
And
Is
you
yes,
know,
they charged him
yeah.
for I don't know, murder or
Shaken baby
manslaughter or
syndrome,
whatever it was that he got convicted of. But really, the essence of his story is that because he's autistic, he acts differently than the rest of us.
Yes. And you know, you and I have talked about that on some of the shows we watch, the crime series.
What is a normal
shows.
way to
You
act
can't-
after you've been involved in
Everybody
something like that?
acts different, and they have different backgrounds that you can't predetermine
If only
how
there was
someone
some
should
sort of a
act.
book or something that you could, a rule book
right.
that would tell you how you're supposed to act after you've been involved in a murder or even seen somebody else murdered or
Right.
anything.
Right.
How do you laugh? Do you cry?
Mm-hmm.
Do you jump up and down? Do you pull your hair out? Do you just walk around and eat a sandwich? I mean,
Right.
what do you act? How do you act after something
And
like that?
the interesting thing is that the lead detective who investigated Roberson's case and testified at his trial about how he didn't act the way he should have acted, and actually his testimony is what put Roberson away. That detective has now changed his mind, and he believes that Roberson's daughter, Nikki, was not shaken to death. They have found evidence that she had severe pneumonia that had been undiagnosed.
So here's a 2-year-old baby who's sick with pneumonia and falls out of bed and winds up dead in the end. And her autistic dad, who didn't know exactly how to behave socially in that circumstance, winds up going to prison.
Yes.
So did he?
Sentenced to death.
Sentenced to death.
He's on death row right now.
Wow.
He previously faced execution in 2016, but the execution was stayed after his attorneys argued that the conviction was based on junk science and false and misleading and scientifically invalid testimony.
Wow.
So they stayed his execution, but he isn't off the hook because they've rescheduled it for October 17th
This month.
this month.
Like a couple weeks from now.
Yes.
Not even that long.
That's right.
Wow.
And in response, 80 state lawmakers in Texas signed a letter that they sent to the governor that raises grave concerns that Texas was preparing to execute Roberson for a crime that did not occur. 80 Texas legislators.
Wow. If that is, you hear this thing about when people go to trial that all the defense has to do is create some
Reasonable doubt.
some level
Right.
of doubt about the guilt or innocence of the suspect, and that should be enough to get an acquittal. That the prosecution has to prove that this person did it or whatever.
That's right.
And I just think that it's fascinating that here it is yet again, this situation where why wouldn't they at least just push the pause button?
Wait, just let's figure this out.
What's the big hurry to get it done right now?
I don't know.
I don't get that.
I don't understand it.
Especially when so many have doubts.
Yes.
Lawmakers themselves have
80
doubts.
Texas lawmakers who are tough on crime.
Right.
Texas is really tough on crime.
Right.
They have doubts. Plus, his detective that prosecuted him now does not believe he did it.
Huh.
It's just amazing. And they're going to go ahead and take him and execute him on the 17th if something doesn't change, if someone doesn't step up and say something. And in fact, Texas Representative Joe Moody says it's incumbent upon us to demand the best of our justice system. And what's happening in this case is not our best.
I guess what freaks me out is that this is 2 weeks from today that they're going to make a permanent punishment solution to whatever they
what
thought
could be
a problem.
big mistake.
It could be a
Right.
huge mistake, and they just, I just don't get it. Why
Why the rush?
why is our justice system so messed up?
Because there's power plays in it. I mean,
I think so.
it's
I
the
think it's
power
political.
plays. It's all political. It's all power plays around our justice system.
Sure.
And we, the people, pay the price. Robert Roberson, who, for goodness sakes, is an autistic man who didn't do anything. He's been on death row for 20 years.
Wow. Yeah, that's a shame.
It's just too much, I think.
We often think of legacy as something left behind after we're gone, but it is created over a lifetime. The time we invest in relationships, careers, passions, and personal growth all contribute to what we leave behind.
And you know, Chris, I think a lot of people think of legacy as financial. You know, we leave behind some kind of fortune for our family, and that's our legacy. I really think legacy has a lot more to do with what we do in our life while we're here. You know, what things we've done for other people that they remember when we're gone, or that changes that we cause to be put into place that continue after we're gone. That's legacy to me.
Well, I think that legacy is a lot more than that. I think there's tons of ways to look at legacy. For instance, I was standing in our library looking at all of our books, and this thought came to my mind that I wonder if any of our books, just glancing across the face of them, if any of them have the word legacy in the title. And I didn't find anything that said legacy in the title, but then it dawned on me, it hit me, that anybody that writes a book, they've already created a legacy.
That's true.
The book itself is a record of whatever idea the author had in his or her mind. And they put it into a book. Memoirs are a great one. I know an author that wrote a memoir.
Yeah, I know a few.
I think it was even a #1 bestseller on Amazon,
yes, it was.
at least for a while.
Yes, it was.
It was pretty interesting. So anyway, I think it's fascinating that when we're talking about legacy, there's so many things that people do that other people remember well into the future, like Abraham Lincoln or Julius Caesar. You know, there's people out there that have done amazing things, but most of those people are really remembered because somebody wrote down what they did. And writing down has a lot to do with it. I mean, there's so many things that have to do with writing when it comes to legacy.
Yeah, and you know, there's several books. Like, someone just published a book recently about Louisa May Alcott, and took all of, oh no, it was Laura Ingalls, and they took all of her notes that she had used when she wrote her books. She kept diaries, and they published this story of her life, 100 years after she's gone. And I have another book called Stumbling Blocks, and it's about the woman who wrote the book The Darkest Child, and it's the only book she published. But she had notebooks and notebooks and notebooks full of poetry and essays and other stories. And this Stumbling Blocks book, her estate put this book together with all these notebooks that they found, and it's a pretty substantial sized book. So, and her name's on the cover as the author, and she's been dead for years.
I think the point that you're making is that you don't even have to be the publisher. You don't even have to. You can be an author and just write a journal that you leave under your table.
That's right. And
under
as
your
long as
bed.
somebody finds it at some point, it's
even
a
if
legacy.
it never gets published.
Right.
Even if it's just some kid that finds it 5,000 years from now in the future can pick it up and read about somebody else. And
I bought that little diary at the antique store a year or so ago. I need to find that. And the girl was like 17, and it was her diary, and she kept notes of how much she spent for a new pair of nylons. And, it's kind of interesting reading through that. And she probably thought, 100 years from now, nobody's going to care anything about
But
what
that's
I
legacy.
did. But I have her
She
little
left
book.
it behind.
That's right.
Had she done those things and then not written it down, her life would have come and gone, and people would not know. But now you know how much she
Yes.
paid for nylon.
And
back
I know
in
all about
1920.
the things she was worried about, and she
Right.
didn't want her parents to find out. And I actually did a search for her. She lived in Maryland, Baltimore, and I've done a search for her name. I haven't been able to find anything, but I'm going to look that up and get back into it.
I like thinking of legacy as being this. It's not a tangible thing in most cases. I mean, there are some situations where it is, but it's more like this element, this idea, thought in the minds of people, and those are the people that are left behind. I'm not talking about the person that created a legacy. I'm talking about the people that remember that person once they're gone. And I like to think of it sort of like what branding is. And so branding is this thought in the minds of all the people that are in a market.
Yeah, about
And
that product.
about that product.
Or about that company.
And I think it's amazing that really good branding drills it into my brain so deeply. And I remember things like Tony the Tiger, and he was just like, they're great, and I can't help but remember that with a smile from when I was a kid.
Yeah, and I always
50 years ago.
Silly rabbit.
Tricks are for kids.
And, sometimes I'll be working on something and I get somewhere and I stop myself and go, silly rabbit.
Yeah.
And most people probably wouldn't know what I'm talking about.
I wish I were an Oscar Mayer
yeah.
wiener. That is what I truly
truly
love
like
to
to
be. For if I were an Oscar Mayer wiener, everyone would be in love with me. I mean,
Our grandkids
How can
don't
you-
know that song. We need to teach it to them.
How can you separate that from even legacy?
Yes,
That's
yes.
powerful, and it
That's
just
right.
carries people forever.
And then they had the Oscar Mayer wiener trucks driving around town.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun.
So that's all branding. I mean, getting back to legacy, it's sort of the same thing. Is that when
Well,
somebody
I think
does something,
branding is the legacy of a business. That's what we remember. That's what's left behind.
yes, right. I think that's branding. But,
Where's the beef?
right? Where's the beef? Where's the beef? That old lady with the
And the Wendy's commercial. That's pretty good.
yeah.
That's pretty good. Well, Chris, I think you have a legacy. Perhaps we share it, but it's mostly yours. And that's our building in Sedalia.
Yeah. I suppose so, because the building in Sedalia, for me, it definitely is legacy, because for me it was so important to me that I was creating and what's a word for it? Renovating, remodeling. There's something
Saving.
else. Saving. Yeah, saving the building. There was the dust and the hard work and the sweat and the blood and the tears, bringing brick back to life and putting up that beam that you and I put up,
yes.
and then the whole roof. We put on a whole roof.
Yeah, you and I.
A couple of old fogies in our
Put
50s.
a roof on a building.
Putting a commercial roof on a building together. I mean, it was... but we saved that building.
We did.
And look at the building today.
Today, it is the centerpiece of Sedalia, Missouri, a small little town, but there's a coffee shop in there run by a Mennonite man, and he's the one who bought our building. And
it has a spectacular spirit.
Yes, it does.
The building itself and the work that we did on that building.
And he made a courtyard out in the, in the little yard next to the alley so people can sit outside and drink coffee. And I'm so proud of our building, and our building is so happy. It likes to be filled with people.
Yeah. And I wish that there was more that I could say. I mean, it would just go on and on and on. I could just talk about it for hours.
Talk about that building forever. I know you were in love with it, and it was hard for you to leave it, but we had to let it go to somebody else.
It was dying when we bought it.
Yeah.
It was dying. It had a broken back, and it wasn't coming back, and it needed somebody that had the know-how to do it, but it also needed somebody that had, it wasn't just a willingness. There's other people that may have been willing to do it, but I was in a circumstance where I could afford the risk. That I had nothing to lose, let's put it that way.
Right.
So when we took that building over, I brought in a bunch of knowledge and a bunch of hard work, and I created something that will last for hundreds of years into the future.
Yeah.
So other people, even if they don't know that my name is associated with that building and that brick that we worked on, they will see that, wow, this is a great place, and they'll enjoy themselves.
That's
and
right.
and I have to just be happy that I was a part of that. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I love it. We could put a corbel on the wall, and we put this horse statue on it. It was high up. We had a plan. We were going to do something with it. I don't know what.
They kept that.
They kept it. And they said the original building
Corbel
owners
or
who
something
saved
like
it,
they
the
call it.
corbel.
Yeah.
They put that up here, and we're leaving it because it's theirs, and they love this
Yeah.
building, and so we're keeping it up here. And we went in to have coffee, and like, there's our horse and our corbel up on the wall.
Right. Yeah.
That
Excellent.
was pretty cool.
Well, some people create a legacy, and the legacy is actually considered to be a legacy by the rest of the community around them while they're still alive. So you don't have to die in order for it to be labeled as a legacy.
That's true.
And for instance, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs won again.
They
4-0.
I'm going to have a heart attack before this season is over. I'd just like them to come ahead in the first quarter and stay ahead the whole game.
Why can't they, right? Yeah, why do they have
to wait to the last play of the game to win? It's like, oh my gosh.
dragging
But
us through
you know
oceans
what?
of adrenaline?
I wouldn't want to be a team that was coming in to play Patrick Mahomes
Right.
because he's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. So, but back to Legacy. Do you know there's a website called legacy.com?
No, I didn't know that.
At a glance, it appears to be almost entirely about obituaries.
Huh.
And I think obituaries is definitely a worthy second mention, at least,
Yes.
about Legacy.
Well, the obituaries now, these days, they're on the internet. So you can go look up anybody's obituary. And it is a memento of who that person was and what they did.
Which is Legacy.
Yes.
So you write down what people were. Were they an attorney or an architect? Were they a gravedigger? Were they did they make reservations for U-Haul? For
Somebody did.
who knows? Yeah, somebody did. Were they an author, a published author?
Oh, yeah.
So if you're going to write an obituary, that certainly is Legacy. It tells people what this person achieved while they were here.
Yeah.
And it says when they passed and when they were born.
Maybe
and
you should write mine before I go so I can read it, and I'll write yours
Let's get to it right
before
now.
you go. And then we'll
let's
know
do it.
what people are going to say about us when we're gone.
Yeah, I think we know what they're going to say about you.
Well,
Yeah.
you might write.
You already have a legacy, I
well,
think.
I do. Yes, that's true.
So we have a bunch of books in our library, and we have a book called The Dynasty, which is about the New England Patriots. Which is one of my favorites, growing up in New England, of course.
Yes.
Miracle at Fenway, which is the bloody sock on the mound.
I think we talked about that already.
I love that. We need to talk about it forever.
No.
We have a book from the 9/11 event,
Yes.
No
We have
Day
several
Shall
of those.
Erase You, and that book is definitely Legacy. That is just some powerful testimony about what happened that day and a bunch of people that were heroes on that day. But then there's Lincoln and Washington and Caesar, and there's poets like Langston Hughes. We've got giant tomes with Henry David Thoreau and Robert Frost. But perhaps all books, including today's published memoir, will be explored and cherished by Earth's heirs 5,000 years from now.
Ooh, 5,000 years.
Here's a memoir that I wanted to read.
I think you need those glasses.
I wanted to read a little bit of this passage. So this is a memoir by Toby. What's the last name? Dorr?
That's me.
Toby Dorr. So Toby Dorr wrote this, and this is her published memoir, Living with Conviction. After a few agonizing seconds, Gate 1 begrudgingly began to open in front of me. Driving forward to freedom, every moment seemed to be in ultra-slow motion. My heart pounded in my ears. Even the blinking of my eyes felt like the slow roll of a prison door closing. The gravel road turned right, and my life turned with it. The road felt different from all the other days I'd driven it, but that day there was no going back. I didn't care about the price. If I'd known, I couldn't possibly have done anything different. Until that instant, it had all been a dazzling fantasy about running away with a handsome younger man, a bad boy who loved the way I smelled and talked. I turned onto the paved road of the city. The dog crate behind me remained still. Relieved at the silence, I began to picture myself at a dog adoption after all. My shoulders relaxed, and I took a deep breath. I let myself believe, for a moment, that I had not thrown my life away. Pretty good writing.
Yes, it is.
I think the author is awesome.
I do too.
All right, so anyway, why I wanted to read that is because I think that legacy a lot of times has to do with a person's willingness to embrace courage and to be courageous enough, to be brave enough to make a change in this world that even your own family is standing up saying, no, I don't know what it is that who do you think you are, thinking that you can play a guitar well enough so that you can make $500,000 playing guitar for 10,000 people in a stadium. Who are you if you think that you're capable of restoring a building? I mean, there's so many different things that people expect other family members to behave a certain way, and when they don't behave that way, everybody gets nervous.
That's true.
And that same feeling even is on the inside, where you have your own self-doubt, like, who the heck am I to end felony murder? I'm just a old fat guy that has nothing to do with any of this, and I'm a veteran. I don't need to be involved in this. I could just be doing something different. But that's the easy path.
That's right.
And I feel like legacy is something that requires heroic efforts.
And it requires a passion for what it is you're doing and a lot of energy.
Yes, I agree. There's another book. This kind of speaks to this courage thing that we're talking about, and this is an amazing book. Everybody should read this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Dale Carnegie.
So this is a massive
That
classic.
book, I think, is published like nearly 100 years ago. It's probably published in the 50s or something like that, and it's still in print today and still selling.
Dale Carnegie will tell you that he has made a living all these years, not by teaching public speaking. That has been incidental. I love that word, incidental.
I love that word too.
He claims his main job has been to help men conquer their fears and develop courage. So, one more time, Dale Carnegie, a giant in his field, is saying that it's not necessarily that what everybody thinks of Dale Carnegie as teaching people public speaking isn't really what he wants to be known for. He wants to be known for courage.
Helping people face what they fear.
Yes. And to dive into that.
Yes.
That is not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not.
That's incredibly difficult. I'd like to lose weight, and I don't even know how to do that. I wish that I had the courage and the strength and the fortitude to just change.
Well,
I wish I could snap my fingers and just be all of a sudden be willing to do what it takes.
but you know, Chris, when we talked about starting a podcast, I was like, I have a podcast, and so, I was thinking all these fun things we could do. And you were just adamant, this podcast is going to be dedicated to ending felony murder. And I thought, how can we do that? And it came together, and I think it's a great idea, and I think that's your legacy. along with the
Yes.
building in Sedalia.
Yeah, I agree. And, the building in Sedalia is a personal legacy.
Uh-huh.
But felony murder is an offense to our nation.
Yes, it is.
It's not just this. Well, for instance, I'm not here doing this podcast, and I'm not thinking in terms of saving. What was the name again?
Robert
Roberson.
Roberson.
I'm not here to save Robert Roberson. I wasn't here last week or a couple of weeks ago to save Marcellus Williams. What I'm here to do is I'm here to recognize that people die.
Mm-hmm.
And people die in different ways. Some people die because they're executed. Some people die because they got old. Some people die because they were a baby in a shaken baby situation. Mm-hmm. There's lots of different ways to die, and we're all going to do it. All of us. But what I think is offensive is a cultural norm that has been accepted by an entire nation of people that know doggone well that there's something wrong with this. This is wrong. Mm-hmm. It's wrong, 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 and they shouldn't be doing it.
I agree.
It has to change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that isn't going to affect necessarily Robert Roberson or any of the other people that are actually on death row right now, but it may change the course of this nation.
Yes.
And make the nation a happier place.
That's right.
And help people in the future not have to face something that's so unjust.
Yes.
As felony murder.
Yes, I agree.
What is felony murder?
It's a loophole.
It's a loophole. And I hate loopholes.
I know you do. So let's just dive right into our felony murder segment then, because I think I have one for you here today that is going to fit just exactly what you're talking about.
So, let's see. Here we are at our favorite part of the episode, felony murder.
Felony murder. We're jumping ahead a little bit.
And it's inspired by John Maynard.
Yeah.
John Maynard was the fella that was in prison for life for felony murder. Mm-hmm. He didn't have a gun on him. I've read all of the documents. He didn't have a gun. He didn't shoot anybody. He didn't pull any triggers. He happened to be with somebody else that they were doing a carjacking. So they were committing a felony.
Yes. And
they shouldn't have been doing that. And it's so important to teach people that you're only as good as the company you keep.
That's true.
If you're going to avoid felony murder, the best way to do it is to keep your nose clean.
That's right. Don't hang out with people that
don't
are
even commit the felony
That's
in the first place, because
That's
if anybody happens to die, you're in big trouble.
Well, I have a really interesting story for you today, and this is a legacy story. Adnan Khan was 18 when he participated in a robbery, and his accomplice stabbed a man to death during the crime. Although Khan didn't commit the stabbing and knew of no intent to kill anyone beforehand, he was sentenced to 25 years to life for felony murder. But Khan didn't just hang out in prison and become an institutionalized inmate. He decided that he was going to learn everything he could about the felony murder rule and try to make a difference. He said, the only way for me to go home is if we change this law. Otherwise, I'm probably going to die in here. So he started researching and learning. He was a resident of the state of California, so he learned everything there was to know about the California felony murder rule. And then he got involved with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, and Khan actually started his own organization called Restore Justice, and he did this while he was in prison. His nonprofit organization gathered data on people convicted for felony murder. And he worked with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition to put all this together. And the results revealed that many serving lifelong sentences only played a minor role in the felony.
Now, I want to interrupt here just for a second, is that I think that this is also something that's very telling. Is I believe that there are people that are, what would you call it, felonious. Mm-hmm. They're people that their level of character.
They're dangerous.
They're dangerous people that are out to scam other people, to hurt other people, to take advantage of any situation that they can, any circumstances that they can. And other people that do something that's considered a felony and they wind up going to prison, if you meet them and you talk to them and you realize that they, even while they're behind bars, that they have enough potential for them to be able to teach themselves law in prison against all odds, and then use that to change the law so that they can help themselves be released.
Right.
You're not a felon, Toby.
No.
Yes, you're
I have
on
the
record.
label of a felon,
Yes.
but I'm not a felon.
But there's nothing. There's just nothing about the way that
Yeah.
you behave. You're a sweater knitting grandma. You stop at the street lights for too long, and you just you don't do anything wrong ever. You are a rule follower.
Yes, I am.
So for you to go and do something as stupid as you did, which by the way was pretty dumb,
Well, yeah.
but you're not a felon.
Yeah.
You're just not that kind of a person. Your character is a different character. Same thing here.
Yeah. So, Adnan Khan and the anti-recidivism group shared the data they collected with Senator Nancy Skinner. So Senator Skinner and Joel Anderson then introduced Bill 1437 in the state of California, which proposed changes to the felony murder rule. So a defendant was required to play a more direct role in the killing. So you can't just send everybody to prison for felony murder that even had a loose connection to the crime. They have to actually have been directly involved in the killing. And so the bill was signed into law on September 30th of 2018, and the felony murder law changes took effect in California the following January 1st. Which allowed those with minor roles in a felony resulting in death to be resentenced. And this was 2018. We're just talking a 6-year period. And they've had 602 individuals resentenced. That was between 2019 and 2022. So in a 3-year period, 602 California inmates were resentenced. And collectively, they saw a reduction of 11,353 years in prison.
That's a lot of time.
That's a lot of time. That was according to the LA Times report. So, one thing you have to think of, when you look at these cases and you resentenced them, at the time they looked at them, there was some deliberation about whether these people were dangers to society or not. And they decided 602 of them with prison sentences of over 11,000 years could be released.
So Khan was guilty of robbery.
Yes.
And he didn't kill anybody.
Right.
And so when they modified this rule, the felony murder rule, which by the way, it sounds like some of what California has done is similar to what Australia did, which is to modify the rule.
Right.
So in a way, I'm almost okay with that. I'm no bleeding heart. Toby, you know that I'm not. I'm pretty hard on crime and stuff. I'm sort of over on the right side of this whole equation, but I don't like it when I hear that people like those kids. What was it? A couple of weeks ago, we did a podcast where there were a bunch of kids and one of them got shot by a police officer, and then the other kids get nailed for felony murder.
Yeah, it's just not right. So what Khan actually said. When he was resentenced, he got 3 years for robbery, but he'd already served 15 years in prison, so he was released without parole or probation. But, one thing that Khan said was that committing a robbery is absolutely wrong, and I carry responsibility for that. But I don't carry responsibility for other people's actions. And, that's something we teach our kids, too. So how is it that we're putting people in prison for other people's actions when they didn't participate in the killing? It just doesn't make sense.
You know what it reminds me of? It sort of reminds, this whole felony murder thing sort of reminds me of the other unjust thing, which was debtor's prison.
Yes, and we did away with that.
We did away with that, and if we have
unless you owe the IRS.
If we have a grandfather or a father that had some negative, either a balance that he owed or whatever, that the debt was, handed down.
Right.
And, that's not right.
No, it's not.
A kid should have to grow up having to pay for something that somebody else did,
That's
even if it's
right.
his own father.
That's right.
You know, it shouldn't be that way.
It's not right. New York and New Jersey have been watching closely this way this law has been changed in California, and they're actually considering changes to their felony murder law as well. Kentucky has outlawed it altogether. So, I think change is coming, and I think the more people we can talk to and hear about what's wrong with our criminal justice system.
It'd be nice if we could get to a point where there's that it catches some legs.
Yes.
You know, that if it goes a bit viral, and so.
Yes, I agree. So that's our felony murder story, and actually this felony murderer has made a change to the law while he was in prison. He started a nonprofit organization to help other inmates, and he's now a free man. That's
legacies. Legacies can outlast our physical presence. Consider how your words, actions, and contributions might echo long after you are gone. What seeds are you planting today that will bear fruit for future generations?
I think that's an interesting question. I think, Chris, you're planting the seed of this podcast. What else
Well,
do you think you're working on?
The podcast, I've been thinking about this recently. I've been thinking it's great to make a podcast, and I think it's entertaining. I think we've had fun doing it. However, there's an element of feeling like listening to my own voice, my own words, my own wisdom maybe, is sort of making me feel like I should do something audacious.
Write a book?
No, more like call my senator.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
More like take some sort of an action that is not really necessarily the kind of action that Chris Dorr is about.
We are 20 miles from Washington, D.C. I think we should get involved with some of these congressional hearings and Senate hearings and
hey, I got an idea. I could wear one of those buffalo heads with the horns.
No, we're not going there. No. That's a legacy we don't want.
Now it's time to draw a card from our basket and reveal the topic of our next episode. Let's see what time has in store for us.
Okay, today I'm drawing
Timelines.
Timelines.
I already have some ideas.
Ooh, I do too. I'm an old project manager from Sprint. Timelines was my thing.
Very nice. I can't wait to hear about your timelines at Sprint.
Well, they're kind of boring, so maybe we won't talk about those. But
well, maybe. I think we'll make it interesting.
Yeah, I think we will too. So thank you for joining us on this journey through time and legacy. As we reflect on the moments that shape our lives, it's clear that how we spend our time defines the story we leave behind. What legacy are you building with each passing day? We hope today's conversation has inspired you to think more deeply about how your actions, big and small, create a lasting impact. Until next time, keep making the most of your time, because your legacy is in the making.
Share your own reflections and stories using hashtag 2DoorsLegacy and join the conversation about how we can make the most of the time we're given.
This is Christian and Toby Dorr. We'll see you in the next episode.
2 Doors Down. It's about time.
Subscribe on YouTube at 2 Doors Down. For exclusive content, check out our Patreon channel. We're going to be giving away some fun stuff there. Our website is 2doorsdown.com.
Until next time.